Story 1. The Snow Woman of Aomori, Tohoku. You never forget the sound of snow when it's wrong. It was supposed to be a routine trip. Just me and Kazuo, my mentor, hiking out to log recent tree fall reports northeast of the Aomori Ridge. We'd taken that trail dozens of times. But that day, the cold came faster than usual. Thicker. It didn't howl like the storms we knew. It crept, like breath held too long. The radio forecast said nothing about a whiteout. But by mid-afternoon, the sky had drained itself of color, and every direction became the same pale shade of lost. No wind, no light, just a soft hiss in our ears and snow that came sideways. Our voices were swallowed by it. Kazuo led us to a trail cabin nobody had used in years. I could tell by the way he broke the lock without hesitation that he had history with it. The place was barely a room, timbers groaning under their own weight, windows long gone, and not a single brazier or blanket. Still, it was better than freezing upright under a cedar. We huddled on the floor in silence, too cold to speak. My fingers were stiff, eyes raw from the sting of snow. I remember thinking that I could hear something behind the wind, like cloth brushing across wood. Sometime past midnight, I woke up. Not from noise, but from the cold. It wasn't natural. It didn't bite. It pressed, like something was trying to freeze me from the inside out. The walls had gone pale with rime. The floor groaned under unseen weight. And then I saw her. She didn't walk in. She was there. A woman in white, tall, skin like frost, hair flowing down her back like misted threads. Her kimono fluttered though the air stood still. No breath escaped her lips, and yet I could feel it, a scentless cold pulling the warmth from everything she passed. Kazuo was asleep beside me, or I thought he was. She bent over him slowly, like wind bending a tree branch, and exhaled. He didn't move again. Ice blossomed across his face like blooming veins of glass. His eyelids froze shut, lips blue, skin stiff. I didn't breathe, couldn't. Her head turned toward me, not in curiosity, but certainty. She knew I was watching. Her eyes were endless, not cruel, just empty. She floated closer. I couldn't move, even as her face came inches from mine. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than thought. I let you live tonight, but if you ever speak of me, ever, I will return, and you will not see morning. She blinked once, turned, and walked back into the snow. There was no sound of footsteps, no wind, just white, swallowing white. By dawn, the blizzard had lifted. Kazuo's body was stiff, face blank. No signs of struggle, just cold. They said he died of exposure. Said we were lucky I made it back alive. I never corrected them, but that silence I kept. It wasn't luck. It was fear. 5 winters passed since that night in the cabin. I never spoke of it. Kazuo was buried under a cedar near the ranger station with frost still woven into his eyebrows. They called it sudden exposure, and no one questioned why I had survived untouched. I learned to live with silence and to fear snow that made no sound. I now work solo, forestry. Still in Aomori, the ridgelines haven't changed, but I keep to the lower paths. I don't stray far from town unless the forecast's clear for days. That's one promise I made to myself. I met Yuki in early spring 2 years ago, just after the thaw. She was standing beside the frozen riverbank at dawn, pale as the ice she seemed to watch. Her hair was long, dark, motionless in the wind, and her coat was out of place, thin and white, the kind no one wears in the mountains unless they don't feel the cold. She didn't say much, but something about her quiet steadiness settled the noise inside me. We married 6 months later. The villagers adore her. Yuki is graceful, polite, the kind who always leaves an impression without saying much at all. But even in the height of summer, she prefers to keep the curtains drawn. When she goes out, it's always before sunrise or in overcast weather. Some of the older folks call her snow-blessed, half joking like a compliment. They say her skin hasn't changed a bit since she arrived. Not a single freckle, not a wrinkle. Just that same distant, windless beauty. The kids, Hina and little Daichi, say funny things. Once, Hina told me her mother smelled like when you open the window during a snowfall. Daichi, who's barely 4, said one night that Mom's shadow goes the wrong way. I laughed it off, but I stopped laughing when I started seeing snow in places it shouldn't be. It started with small things. A cold breath on the mirror, even when the room was warm. Flakes melting on my pillow in the dead of summer. Frost edging the window panes from the inside. Sometimes, when I blink, I see snow falling just behind my eyelids, even when I'm indoors. A few nights ago, I woke to find Yuki standing at the back door, barefoot. No coat, just staring out at the stars, her hand slightly lifted like she was feeling something I couldn't. Her skin glowed, not with warmth, but with the pale shimmer of distant snow light. She didn't turn when I spoke, didn't flinch, just whispered, "It's coming again." The quiet storm. I didn't know what she meant. Yesterday, an older man in the village, Mr. Hayashi, stopped me while I was loading timber. He pointed to Yuki across the street and said, "She reminds me of a girl from when I was a boy, a woman who walked through a blizzard in '74 and never came out the other side. You know, she looks exactly the same." I said nothing. That night, I asked Yuki directly, "How did we meet?" "Really? Do you remember the riverbank?" She smiled faintly, but her eyes, they didn't reflect the lamplight. "Does it matter, Sora? We're here now. Don't ruin it with questions." She placed her hand on mine. It was cold, always cold, and I remembered something she said once long ago when we first brought Hina home from the clinic. Some things only grow where the snow never melts. I'm beginning to wonder what she meant. I used to think cold was just something you wore more layers for, something simple, predictable. Now I know better. The storm hit without warning. It began with the wind, dead still for days, then suddenly rushing in like a scream you didn't know you'd bottled up. By midnight, the snow was so thick I couldn't see the shed from the kitchen window. The power cut out just past 2 a.m. The generator, which I had tested not even a week before, refused to start. Even the battery radios only crackled with strange static, pulsing like a heartbeat. The village was cut off. We rationed what we could, lighting the house with oil lamps. The snow pressed against the windows like something alive, testing the glass. There were no plows, no drone alerts, just silence. And then Daichi fell sick. He was burning with fever, but when I touched his fingers, they were ice cold. His breath was shallow, and he whimpered in his sleep. Hina, scared and crying, said something I didn't want to hear. Mom was watching him. She was whispering something with no words. Yuki sat by the window, unmoving. I stepped outside to clear the path to the shed for wood. That's when I saw her. Yuki, standing barefoot in the snow, no coat, no shoes, no steam in her breath. She stood there perfectly still, her arms hanging limply, her hair lifting slightly in the windless dark. The snow didn't fall on her. It parted around her. "Yuki?" I called. She didn't respond, didn't even turn. I don't know how long I stood there watching, until she finally walked back toward the house. The snow didn't crunch beneath her feet. Later that night, I got a knock at the door. It was Mr. Nakamura from the weather station. He had walked through the storm, face bleeding from windburn, eyes wide. His radio tower had gone dead during the front. He said something was interfering with the signals, every channel looping static in the shape of patterns. Like eyes, he told me. Frosted eyes. Do you understand what I'm saying? I did. I didn't say so. Before he left, he said, "If your wife's outside during this, you should bring her in." But I didn't respond. I had started to wonder if I ever really brought her in at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, checking windows, sealing cracks, and that's when I found the photograph. It was slipped between the pages of a book we never read anymore, an old government manual about forest zoning. The photo was of a group of villagers standing beside a wooden cabin nearly lost in snow. The year stamped at the bottom read 1974. In the far left corner, half-shaded, stood a woman, white kimono, long black hair, still eyes, the exact same face. Not similar, the same. Yuki. I dropped the photo. My finger stuck to its edge, frost-bitten from a piece of paper. I tried to tell myself it was a trick of the light, a coincidence. But when I slept, I dreamed of the cabin again. That rotting door, the frost creeping up the walls, and the wind whispering in a voice I could never quite remember, but always knew. The door blew open in the dream, and the snow came in. I woke up screaming. Yuki stood in the corner of the room, arms at her sides. Her face was unreadable. Not blank, just still, like it had been waiting for something. I think she knows I'm close to remembering, close to breaking. There's a kind of silence only snow can bring, the kind that isn't peaceful, just empty, the kind that swallows sound and memory with it. I'd carried that silence for years, but I couldn't anymore. Daiichi was barely breathing. Hina had started sleepwalking, leaving tiny barefoot tracks across the hallway floor at night, toward the door, always the door. And Yuki had stopped blinking. That night, with the wind rattling the roof and frost lacing the inside of the windows, I sat both children down by the heater and told them a story. Just a story, I said. I told them about a time when I was 17, about a storm in the forest, a forgotten cabin, and a woman in white who froze a man to death with a breath that had no warmth. I told them how she spared a terrified boy with a warning. "If you ever speak of this, I will return." Hina watched me the whole time, eyes too wide for her age. Daiichi didn't respond. His fever was peaking. Outside, the blizzard thickened until the power lines groaned and cracked, and in the hallway mirror, the frost began to form. From the center outward, like veins of ice crawling from inside the glass. When I turned, Yuki was standing in the doorway. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with that eerie reflection you only see off snow at night. Her feet left no prints on the floor. Her breath didn't fog the air. You told them. It wasn't anger in her voice. It was disappointment, like something sacred had been broken. I stood in front of the kids. They needed to know. She stepped forward. I asked only for silence, for a chance to stay in this warmth, to be more than what I am. And you gave it away. Her gaze softened then, And for a moment I saw her as I once did, the quiet girl on the riverbank, hands folded, unsure of the world she stood in. I wanted to believe I could stay. She reached out, but not toward me, toward Hina and Daichi. Then she stopped herself. "I won't take them," she said. "They were never meant for winter." I don't remember packing. I only remember the sound of the door unlocking itself. Yuki stood at the threshold as I wrapped the children in blankets. "Go," she said, "before it begins." As I fled into the storm, the snow parted for us just barely, like the forest was remembering who I was. Behind me, the village lights flickered, then went black. From the ridgeline, I looked back once. Snow was devouring the houses. Trees froze solid in mid-sway. Frost spidered across rooftops like a living thing. The entire valley was vanishing beneath a white that wasn't natural. It wasn't just snow. It was her. It was Yuki. And I think she had kept her promise until I broke mine. We never returned to Aomori. The official reports called it a sudden climate anomaly. Record snowfall, radio interference, and structural collapses. But no one could explain the single cabin left standing in the woods, or why its door had blown open from the inside. And no one could tell me why, sometimes, when the sky goes white and the wind stops moving, I see a woman on the ridgeline, waiting. 10 years later, my daughter Hina keeps the windows closed even in spring. My son won't sleep near mirrors, and I've stopped telling stories. Story 2. They're the dish mansion of Himeji, Kansai. They said the castle would protect us. Its towering gates and pale white walls shimmered like a sleeping swan above the town. From the outer gardens it looked almost gentle, like it belonged to a dream. But I knew better. I had lived inside its ribs for 3 years, polishing its bones. Every day I cleaned the corridors in silence, my eyes cast down, my steps measured. No one sees the servants. We walk between sighs and shadows. We vanish when spoken to. But they always noticed me. I was chosen to care for the porcelain, the 10 dishes of Aoyama. Each plate was painted with mountain mist and blue cranes, delicate as breath. I touched them only with cloth-wrapped fingers. They were older than I was, worth more than all of us. I counted them every morning before the sun reached the inner garden. 1, 2, 3. My voice was always steady until he began to linger. Aoyama Tessen, lord of the inner keep. I was just a maid, yet his eyes followed me like cold water down my back. One evening, I felt them again as I lit the oil lamps near the west wing. I didn't turn, but I heard the shift of his robes. His voice was soft, slow, like honey poured too thick. "You're very careful with those plates, as careful as you are with your words." I bowed. I didn't reply. He stepped closer. "I could have you dressed in silk. Leave this castle as my wife." The flame of the lamp trembled between us. "No, my lord," I said. He didn't move. "No." I held my breath. He laughed then, quietly, but it was not kind. The next day I came to the lacquer box, opened it with care, and froze. 9 plates. I counted again. My fingers shook. 1, 2, 3. My knees nearly gave way. The 10th plate was gone. A soft footstep behind me. "Careless," he said, voice close to my ear. "But I could forgive you if you change your answer." I looked down. My heart beat louder than the wind outside. He was still smiling when he left the room. I didn't sleep that night. I kept repeating the count in the dark. 9, always 9. And in the halls, the castle itself seemed to breathe, slow and heavy, like something waiting to awaken. The next morning, I returned to the dish room before first light. I had barely slept, mind splintered by that flicker in Lord Tesson's eyes. Still, I moved with purpose. My breath was thin. The lacquer box was cool beneath my hands. I opened it. 9. I counted again. 1, 2, 3. My voice quivered. My fingertips grazed the blue crane on the 9th plate. I checked the cloth linings, the corners of the chest, the shelves above and below. Still only 9. The air behind me shifted. He was there. "You've misplaced something," Tesson said softly, as if reciting a poem. "That will cost a servant her life." I knelt instinctively, forehead near the floor. "My lord, it was here yesterday, I swear on my breath." He circled me. I could feel the heat of his gaze before he spoke. "You could be spared if you belong to me." His offer poured into the silence, thick and slow. I did not answer. My heartbeat filled my ears. In the quiet, the castle felt different, watchful, as though its very walls leaned in. "You'll refuse again?" he said. I looked up, my voice a breath. "Yes." He nodded, his mouth tightening, not in surprise, but satisfaction, as if he had waited for this moment. "Then let us see how deeply your loyalty lies." That night, the mood in the halls twisted. The lanterns burned lower. My tasks were stripped from me. I was summoned nowhere, but eyes followed everywhere. I caught one servant slipping away, head low, mouth pressed shut. My name disappeared from the wash ledger. No one spoke to me. No one dared. And the plates, when I returned, were sealed, the box locked, a rusted iron pin through its hinges. Later, near the northern balcony, I heard him again, Tesson's voice from within the garden corridor. I stayed hidden in the screen shadows. His words were brief, hard. "Tonight, before the moon is high," and then silence. I knew it then. What had been taken from the box was not just porcelain. It was my life, folded into a cruel game. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in the servants' quarters, staring at the frayed hem of my robe, listening to every creak, every breeze that slipped through paper screens. Somewhere in the castle, they were making ready. And in my chest, something hollow opened, just wide enough to echo back the number 9. They came for me when the moon sat low and red above the castle's edge. The silence in the corridors was absolute, save for the hiss of sandals across the stones. I knew those steps weren't kind. One of the guards, his face blurred in shadow, took my arms without a word. Another followed. We passed the hall where the plates had once gleamed. It was sealed now. I didn't look back. We walked past walls older than memory, and I noticed then, even the walls seemed afraid. The western courtyard yawned before me like an open mouth. The well stood at its center, deep, ancient, and half swallowed in ivy. I had scrubbed its stone rim clean countless times. I had thought it harmless. It was not. Tesson stood nearby, arms folded, eyes hollow. He didn't speak until the ropes were pulled taut around my wrists. You could have said yes. I looked at him, not with hatred, not with fear, only a quiet, final knowing. I still wouldn't. He gave the smallest nod. Then they lifted me, up, then over. The lip of the well bit into my back. Cold mist rose from below, coiling around my ankles. The air smelled of wet stone and something deeper, like something waiting. The ropes creaked as they lowered me inch by inch. I couldn't scream, not yet. Then I felt it, the blade, a whisper through the dark, then a burning slice across my shoulder, again lower down my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. Another jerk of the rope. Another cut. Tessen's voice floated down. "Count for me now, Okiku." I did not. I had nothing left to give. Then the rope snapped. I remember falling, not fast, not slow, but as if the well itself reached up and swallowed me, inch by inch, until the sky vanished and I became nothing but breath and water and cold. There was no bottom, only the floating silence and the porcelain numbers repeating in my head. 1, 2, 3. They never stopped. They never left me. I do not remember dying. There was only the cold, a weightless drifting. Time untied itself from me. No sun, no sky, just the sound of water echoing through narrow stone. Then the counting began. I did not choose it. It chose me, rose from within like breath. I whispered the numbers without thought, the way rain falls or leaves turn. Each night, as the world above held its breath, I rose from below to count what was once mine. 1, 2, 3. The guards would stop walking. Their feet would freeze mid-step. Some dropped their lamps. One cried quietly before fleeing, too afraid to look back. 4, 5, 6. I never meant to haunt. I only wanted the truth to be known. I only wanted the 10th plate returned, 7, 8, 9. And then, always, silence. A silence so wide it swallowed hearts whole. My voice would rise without control, sharpened by betrayal, cracked by blood. The scream, my scream, was not rage. It was a severed life trying to stitch itself back together. But I could never say 10, and neither could they. Years passed. The world turned unfamiliar. The paper walls grew brittle. Tessen faded into madness or obscurity, or maybe the dust that clung to the well's edge. Some say he still listens at night, hoping to count with me and finish what he began. Others come, tourists, locals, children. They peer into the grate, expecting echoes. Some hear them, some do not. But I am always here. I wait beneath the stone, beneath the years, beneath the truth. I am not soothed. I am not gone. Sometimes, when dusk slips in without birdsong, someone drops a coin between the bars and counts with me. I hear their voice, fragile, almost hopeful, but they never reach 10, and so I count again. 1, 2, 3, forever. Story 3, The Round Schoolhouse, Hokkaido. They told me not to go. Locals around Bibai grow quiet when you ask about the old school hidden in the woods, a place they call Marugako, the Round Schoolhouse. But that silence only made me more curious. I'd come to Hokkaido chasing forgotten architecture and post-war ruins, but this place, it felt different, less abandoned, more left behind. The forest grew strange as I got closer, pines arching overhead like watchers, mist curling low along the roots. I followed the barely visible trail until the trees parted, and there it was, a concrete ring, grayed by decades of weather, nearly swallowed by moss and pine needles. The structure looked like it was trying to vanish, but it hadn't. The silence hit me first. No birds, no wind, just the low static of mist and breath. I stepped through the rusted gate and into the circular courtyard. Everything was still. The building's curved walls loomed around me like a broken wheel. Desks were visible through shattered windows, blanketed in dust and leaves. I took a cautious step forward. My boot crunched something brittle, an old paper plane, water-stained and folded by a small hand, long gone. That's when I heard it. A giggle. It was distant but sharp, the kind that doesn't belong in an empty building. My skin prickled. I turned slowly, but no one was there. only the fog drifting through broken panes and the rustle of pine needles overhead. I told myself it was the wind, just the wind. But the echo of that giggle followed me deeper inside, as if something in those halls had just noticed I'd arrived. And it was waiting. I should have turned back. The giggle still echoed behind me, too soft to place, too clear to ignore. My flashlight trembled as I stepped deeper into the hallway. The school's strange design bent in on itself, a perfect circle. My own footsteps whispered back at me from the walls. The corridor was lined with old doors, each tagged with decayed room numbers and student charts yellowed by age. That's when the lights began to flicker, one at a time. Click, hum, flare. They blinked on above the classrooms along the northern curve, not all at once, but sequentially, like someone was walking just ahead, turning them on as they passed. My mouth went dry. I wasn't alone. "Hello?" I called out, forcing steadiness into my voice. "Is someone there?" Silence. Then a soft shuffle, followed by a second giggle, this time closer. I rounded the bend too quickly and stumbled. My shoulder hit the wall and my light caught something sliding across the cracked floor. A child's backpack, scuffed, faded pink, with one strap torn. It moved just enough to suggest it had been nudged. But the hallway was empty. I crouched near it, hesitating to touch. The zipper was half open. Inside, I saw a small book with scribbles on the cover. I leaned closer, trying to read the name. Then came the footsteps. Light, quick, and directly above me. I jerked my head up. The ceiling creaked faintly, dust falling like ash. The floor above groaned under weight too small for an adult. My flashlight flicked again. I stepped back, breath locked in my chest. In the corner of my eye, one of the classroom doors began to close. Slow, smooth, deliberate. I lunged for the backpack on instinct and clutched it to my chest, then turned toward the stairs. My thoughts screamed leave, but my legs moved forward. I had to know what I'd seen, who I'd heard. The whispers in the corridor faded, but the feeling of being followed only grew stronger. The stairwell stood like a throat cut into the building's core, spiraling up into silence. My hand grazed the rusted railing as I began to climb, still clutching the child's backpack. The air grew colder with each step. Time seemed to stretch. My footfalls echoed strangely, too loud, too delayed, like something was mimicking me from above. Halfway up, the temperature dropped again. Not the kind of chill from open windows or night air, but the sudden still cold that sinks into the bones and makes your breath come out white. I hesitated, just for a second. But the sound of slow footsteps resumed, this time not above me but beside me on the same stairwell. I swung the light toward the curve. Nothing, just the wall. And then I reached the top. She was waiting. At the far end of the landing, motionless beneath a flickering bulb, stood the silhouette of a small girl. Her white dress hung limp, her long dark hair spilled over her face. I couldn't see her eyes. I should have turned and fled, but something, curiosity, fear, disbelief, held me there. I took a step forward. She twitched. Her head jerked up. Her face wasn't there. Smooth skin stretched across where features should be. Just a blank, pale mask. Yet I could feel her watching me, as though her missing eyes were locked to mine. A high, fractured giggle broke the silence. Not from her, but all around me. The corridor bent. Walls rippled outward like waves. Doors stretched impossibly tall, and the windows darkened like ink bleeding through glass. I spun in place, searching for the stairwell, but it was gone. Behind me was only an endless hallway, lights blinking in a slow pulsing rhythm like the building was breathing. My legs finally responded. I turned and ran, but the floor pitched sideways, pulling me down a tilted corridor that hadn't been there seconds ago. The girl's laughter followed me, distorted, looped, layered, like more than one voice trying to speak from the same mouth. I crashed into a door and shoved it open. It led not to a classroom, but to something else. A room too big, too quiet. The shadows here had weight. From behind, I heard her take a step. Only one. I didn't look back. I bolted into the dark, heart hammering in my throat. Weeks have passed. The backpack hasn't moved. I've tried to throw it out twice. Both times, I've found it resting by my front door again by morning, dry, untouched, waiting. I've stopped sleeping. Every night, just before I drift off, I hear it. That same thin giggle curling through the dark like smoke. And once, only once, I heard the faint patter of steps across the ceiling above my room. I live alone. I finally gave in and opened the backpack. Inside, a child's notebook. The pages are warped from age, but the ink hasn't faded. Crude drawings, a circle, the school, stick figures, scribbled black shapes standing too close. One page is torn almost completely out. What's left reads, "She plays with me now. I can't leave. If I go, I forget." I remember those halls warping, the blank face, that portal, fragments of children running, laughing, trapped. I can't shake the thought. Was she trying to show me something or someone? Last night, I found myself standing by my car at 2:37 a.m., backpack in hand. I don't remember getting dressed. I drove without turning on the radio. I didn't need to. Her laughter rode beside me in the back seat. The schoolhouse was exactly as I left it. Pines shifting in the fog, mist curling around the ruin like breath. I crossed the threshold again. No hesitation this time. The halls recognized me. The lights didn't flicker. They simply turned on as I walked. No footsteps now, only silence and intention. She was leading me somewhere. The spiral stair groaned beneath my steps. At the top, no faceless girl, no sudden twist of space, just the empty classroom and the shimmer in the far wall, the portal. It looked different now, clearer, like a window, no longer a shimmer. I stepped forward and saw them. Children, playing in the yard. But everything was muted, like old film. They ran, turned, laughed, but never made eye contact, as if on a loop, lost. One figure stood apart, still, a girl in white. She looked at me. Her face was no longer blank, tired, pale. Her mouth moved once. I couldn't hear it, but I felt it in my head. "You have to remember." Something cold wrapped around my wrist. I gasped, and everything collapsed. I woke on the classroom floor. Dawn light spilled through the cracked windows. Birds chirped outside. The school was silent, normal, still crumbling, but empty. The shimmer was gone. The backpack lay beside me. Inside, a second notebook and a name. Mine. My own handwriting filled the pages, describing the school, the spiral stairs, the girl. Every word I thought I was narrating for the first time, but dated 3 years ago. I left and never looked back. I moved to a new town, changed jobs, changed numbers. I still wake to the echo of giggling. Sometimes I forget what day it is. Sometimes I find the notebook open on my kitchen table, though I lock it in a drawer. Sometimes I see her watching me through reflective glass, elevators, bus windows, mirrors, the girl in white. And sometimes I wonder, did I ever leave that school? Story 4. The Forbidden Village of Inunaki, Kyushu. It started like 100 other road trips. Kyushu's forested highways, burnt orange leaves twisting in the wind, Hana beside me humming along to an old playlist. We had no destination, just the open map, a few gas station snacks, and the fading sunlight bleeding across the mountain ridges. "Shortcut," I said, when the GPS recalculated and flagged a minor road just past Fukuoka. Hana frowned. "It looks narrow," I shrugged. "More scenic this way." We turned. The pavement turned to cracked concrete, narrowed by encroaching vines. Moss coated the edges. Our signal dropped. Still, the GPS map crawled forward, though the arrow seemed hesitant, almost like it didn't want to move. The sky, once golden, now dulled to a deep gray. Mist collected between the trees like breath on a mirror. Then we saw it. A metal sign, half swallowed by ivy and rust. The paint peeled, but the words were still legible in the beam of our headlights. "The Japanese Constitution is not in effect past this point." I laughed nervously. "Is that a joke?" "Let's turn around," Hana said. Her voice didn't match her expression. She looked afraid. But before I could reply, the engine coughed. Once, again, and then died. The dashboard lights faded. The music stopped mid-chorus. My phone, no signal, no bars. I twisted the key, nothing. Just a mechanical click, like something deep inside the car had already given up. "Maybe there's a house nearby," I said, trying to sound calm. And then, movement, a light, barely a glow up in the trees to our right. It flickered orange, like a lantern or a candle, in the window of a structure half hidden by branches and overgrowth. A house, just visible beyond a set of crumbling stone steps. Hana hesitated. "Maybe someone lives there? We'll just ask for help. 5 minutes, that's it," I said. We climbed. Each step creaked under our weight. The forest grew quieter with every footfall. No birds, no wind, only the sound of damp leaves under our boots and something faint, like a distant thump that might have been footsteps or our own heartbeat echoing. The house was small, traditional style. Its tiled roof sagged, and its wooden panels were split from years of rot. Yet the light inside pulsed, like someone had only just left the room. We stood at the edge of the porch. Something about the house made my skin crawl. I turned back to Hana, who pointed behind me. "Is that a phone booth?" she whispered. And it was. Just to the left of the path, nearly swallowed by bamboo, stood a dusty old telephone booth. Glass cracked. The door hung open. I moved toward it. "Wait here," I said. "Just want to check it out." She nodded uneasily. The booth's receiver swung gently as if recently disturbed. I reached for it, cold in my hand, and pressed it to my ear. Nothing, just silence. Then, ring! I nearly dropped it. It hadn't moved, hadn't vibrated, but the sound came from it, loud, violent. I pressed it back to my ear. A whisper, sharp and breathy. Too late. That was all. The line went dead. And from the trees, the light in the house brightened. Hana called out, "Let's just go." But something inside the house moved, a shadow behind the paper door. The porch creaked, and we hadn't even stepped inside yet. The fog thickened as I stepped away from Hana. The broken path crunched beneath my boots, weeds wrapping around my ankles like fingers. Just ahead, bathed in weak moonlight, stood a phone booth, its glass smeared with grime, one panel cracked, the door half ajar. Something about it felt wrong, isolated, out of place, like it had been dropped here from a time long forgotten. I glanced back. Hana stood still by the car, arms crossed, barely visible in the dark. I stepped inside. The receiver hung loose, spinning slightly as if someone had just used it. I touched it, ice cold. When I raised it to my ear, only silence greeted me. No dial tone, no hum, just the faint buzz of wind outside until it rang, loud, sudden, violent. I jerked back, nearly dropping the receiver, which hadn't moved. My ears rang, heart thudding. Still I raised it again. A voice hissed through the line. Too late. Just that. Nothing more. The line cut out. A sharp static burst before silence returned. I lowered the phone slowly, and that's when I heard it. A shuffle from the cottage above. The light in the window dimmed, then flickered brighter, like someone had entered the room. I turned. "Hana!" I called. "Something's off. Don't come up here." But it was already too late. She was climbing the steps, her flashlight beam bouncing erratically. Her expression tightened the closer she got. "I saw someone in the house," she said quietly, not looking at me. We stood before the sliding door. Paper panels warped with moisture, wood swollen and split. A dark streak ran down the base of the door frame, too thin for water, too irregular for dirt. I pushed it open. Dust swirled around us. The air was thick and dead. Tatami mats, sunken from age. In one corner, a low table with 2 teacups, one toppled, both dried and stained green. Cobwebs like veins stretched across the ceiling. No sound, no movement. But something felt, watched. Then we saw them. Footprints. Bloody. Bare. They started by the entry and trailed toward a back room, disappearing into the shadows. I held Hana close. "We need to leave." The door behind us slammed shut. We spun, and there, at the edge of the hallway, stood a figure, an old man, hunched, shirt torn, hair hanging in damp strands over his face, his eyes, white, wide, unblinking, fixed on us. In his hand he gripped a rusted sickle, not raised, just dragging along the floor, screeching. I grabbed Hana's hand. "Run!" We burst through the paper door on the side and into the woods. Branches whipped past, stones skidded beneath our feet. But we didn't slow. Behind us, the rhythm of the sickle dragging along concrete echoed in erratic pulses. We found a road, or what remained of it, cracked, weed-choked. Houses began to rise from the trees, their shapes wrong, their walls half sunken. We ran deeper. The headlights of our car were nowhere, the phone booth gone. The road behind us had vanished. We didn't speak for a long time. Only our breathing filled the space between us as we ran, then walked, then staggered beneath flickering streetlights that should have been long dead. The village stretched on. It wasn't just a house or a clearing. It was an entire grid of homes, shops, alleys, vending machines caked in mold and dirt. Each one looked abandoned for decades, but none were overgrown, as if time had paused, not passed. I checked my phone again. No signal. Battery inexplicably at 3%, though I hadn't used it since the engine died. Hana's flashlight began to flicker, the beam twitching as we passed a shattered sign. Inunaki Communication Center, 1972. The buildings leaned inward. Their windows stared at us like hollow eyes. I counted the homes, 6, 7, 8. Then we turned a corner and saw the first one again. Same broken mailbox. Same overturned bicycle rusted through the frame. "We're looping," I whispered. Hana didn't answer. She was staring at the road. I followed her gaze and saw footprints, bare, smeared with something dark. They weren't ours, not quite. They matched ours, perfectly, step for step. But they'd been made before we arrived, like someone or something had predicted our exact path. We turned around, another street, same houses, same curve, same rusted vending machine half swallowed by ivy. I slammed my fist against it. Cans inside rattled like bones in a tin coffin. "We have to find shelter," Hana said, her voice small. "Somewhere we can think." We chose the largest building in view, a long, low structure with faded kanji across its signboard. Inunaki Village Public Records Hall. Inside, the air was cold, colder than it should have been. Most of the windows had been blown out, and the paper screens were shredded. Rows of file cabinets lined the walls, many burst open. Yellow documents littered the floor. Some were scorched at the edges. Others were marked with black handprints. We stepped over a stack of folders. A handwritten label on the top one read, "Evacuation incomplete. Resistance observed." I opened it. Inside were photographs. Blurred, some were surveillance stills. Villagers staring directly at the camera, eyes glowing white from the flash. In one, a figure, small, hunched, dragged a metal object along the ground. I shut the folder. Something scratched from behind the wall. A long, slow scrape, then stillness. We backed out of the records hall and ducked into a smaller building next door. A schoolhouse. 2 rooms, desks overturned. Dust so thick it dulled the floor. One chalkboard still bore a lesson, frozen in time, simple math problems, and a note that read, "Quiet today. They're watching." I sat down, finally out of breath. Hana curled against the wall, knees to chest. Then we heard it. Children's laughter. It came from the hallway, but the school was empty. I stood, flashlight trembling in my grip. The sound grew louder, as if something was playing it on repeat. But when I stepped outside, nothing. Just the empty hallway and a swinging door at the end. I returned to Hana. Her eyes were wide, locked on the window. "They're outside," she whispered. I looked. Shapes, blurry, between the trees, not moving, but watching. Dozens of them. Some crouched, some standing on rooftops. One leaned sideways, impossibly, like its spine was bending the wrong way. Then I saw him, the old man, standing by the broken vending machine, the sickle dragging again, head tilted, as if listening to something just beneath the earth. But this time, he wasn't coming toward us. He was waiting. When I opened my eyes, Hana was gone. Not missing in the ordinary sense. The kind of gone that empties the air. The kind that leaves silence too still, too deliberate. The schoolhouse was cold. Dust had settled over my footprints as if I'd been asleep for days. But my watch hadn't moved. My flashlight buzzed weakly, its battery drained to a final dim pulse. Outside, the sky was the same lifeless gray. I called out for Hana. No answer, but I saw something. Dragged impressions in the dirt. Thin, trailing footprints. Some barefoot, others too wide, too long. All moving in one direction, into the forest beyond the village. I followed. The forest deepened quickly, each step muffled by wet leaves and a fog that clung low like it was breathing. Soon I came upon a structure half swallowed by the hillside, a rusted tunnel entrance sealed with chain-link fencing. A weather-worn sign bolted to the gate read, "Do not enter. Inunaki Dam Access Shaft." The fence had been clipped recently. Inside, a metal staircase spiraled into darkness. I hesitated, then descended. The tunnel wasn't abandoned. Old fluorescent lights buzzed every few meters, flickering weakly, but enough to show what shouldn't have been there. Filming equipment, monitors, crates labeled in stenciled kanji. Surveillance, Site A. I stepped deeper and found a corridor with peeling white tiles. A room to my left held metal shelves and reels of tape. Some were labeled in marker, Subject 16, Non-Reactive Subject 23, Escape Attempt, Failure, Subject 25. Assimilated a monitor clicked on behind me. Grainy black and white footage played. Trees, a curve in the mountain road. Then our car, pulled to the shoulder, our doors opening, Hana stepping out, me checking my phone. We were being watched before we ever saw the sign. I backed away, and that's when I heard it. Dragging metal, I turned. The sickle man stood in the corridor, still hunched, still silent. But this time, he didn't move. Behind him, others began to appear, shapes half human, some wearing blank masks, some not masked at all, but wrong, as if their expressions were borrowed. I ran, twisting through tunnels past old generators and fuse boxes scorched black. I found a stairwell that led upward. More footprints. I followed them. They ended at a house, one I hadn't seen before, ancient even by this village's standards. It sat where the forest thinned, surrounded by silence. Hana was inside, sitting cross-legged on a tatami floor, staring at a broken television. "Hana," I whispered. She looked at me slowly. Her face was pale, her eyes glassy, but something moved behind them. "I remember things," she said, voice barely hers. "Things that didn't happen to us, but they're mine now." I begged her to come. She didn't move. "They showed me," she said. "They've always been here. They just needed to be remembered." Outside, the crowd gathered. I tried to carry her, but she didn't resist. She just whispered, "You shouldn't have come back for me." Then everything went black. I woke up on the roadside, same spot, same trees. My car sat just ahead, idling like nothing had ever gone wrong. My phone buzzed with signal, no missed calls, no time lost. I touched my face, my skin felt colder, tighter. I looked in the rearview mirror. My eyes were different, a shade too dark. The whites, tinged gray. I spoke Hana's name, but the voice that came out didn't sound like mine. I made it back to the city, to our apartment. But I don't sleep. I don't blink as often. I hear whispers behind the walls, even when the neighbors are quiet. Sometimes I walk to the mirror and see flashes of the village behind me. Fog creeping in, a figure standing in the trees, watching. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear Hana's voice. She's not calling for help. She's calling me back. Back to Inunaki, where I belong. Story 5. The Phantom of Yanagisawa Tunnel, Niigata, Chubu. I swear, if we hadn't missed that stupid highway exit near Nagaoka, none of this would have happened. It was just me and Riku, driving back from a summer trip to the Sea of Japan. We figured we could save some time by taking one of the back roads through the mountains. The GPS suggested a route cutting across the hills of Niigata. It looked legit, quiet, no tolls, maybe a little too quiet. We'd barely noticed how the trees had thickened until the headlights started barely cutting through the fog. The road was getting narrower with every turn, branches clawing at the windshield like they were trying to stop us. Riku muttered something about how places like this always show up in ghost stories. I laughed, nervously. Just after we passed a rusty sign we couldn't even read, half of it obscured by moss and dirt, the GPS announced, "In 400 meters, enter Yanagisawa Tunnel." I tapped the screen. "Never heard of it." Riku looked over at me. "Yanagisawa? Wait, I think I read about that place." I rolled my eyes. Don't start. No, I'm serious, he insisted. There was this old story. Some couple died in that tunnel back in the 80s. Car flew off the road. People say their ghosts never left. He wasn't trying to scare me. Riku didn't play like that. His tone was off, lower, distracted. I caught him staring out the window too long. The trees were gone now. Just sheer mountain on one side and a drop on the other. Guardrails twisted like pretzels. A full moon hung over the cliff like an unblinking eye. That's when the radio went silent. Not off, just quiet. Then a crackle, like a whisper trying to get through. I turned the dial. Static. Then a woman's voice, barely audible, speaking too fast and too soft to understand. Just one sentence, repeated over and over. Riku reached to turn it off, but the knob didn't respond. We passed under a flickering streetlight. Then nothing. Complete dark. Even the GPS lost signal. I kept my eyes ahead. No choice now. The tunnel loomed before us. Tall, ancient, its concrete stained like something had been crying from the inside out. There were no road markings anymore, no other cars, just us and the void ahead. I should have turned back. I should have listened to Riku. I should have listened to the voice. But I pressed the gas, and the car entered the mouth of Yanagisawa Tunnel like it was swallowing us whole. And just like that, the forest, the world, and the safety of reason vanished behind us. There's something unnatural about silence on a mountain road. The only sound was our tires crunching damp gravel as we rolled closer to the mouth of the tunnel. The forest had vanished into a gray blur. Fog so thick it felt like we were driving through a memory, not a place. The GPS had stopped giving directions completely. It just showed our little car icon floating in a blank white void. That's when Riku leaned forward, squinting. "You see that?" he whispered. At first, I thought it was just mist catching the light. But no, there were lights inside the tunnel, faint, bluish, flickering. Too erratic to be headlights. No car ahead, nothing behind. The road should have been abandoned. Then the chill hit. Sharp, sudden, the kind that crawls under your clothes, prickles up your spine, and makes your fingers go numb on the steering wheel. I glanced at the dashboard and felt my chest tighten. Every dial was glitching. The speedometer bounced from 0 to 80 in a blink. The fuel gauge spun in a slow circle. Even the air conditioning turned itself on, blasting cold air, though I hadn't touched a thing. I slammed the brakes. The car rolled to a stop just before the tunnel entrance. My hands were shaking. "You still think it's just some dumb story?" Riku asked. He didn't sound smug, just scared. I didn't answer. The fog was seeping into the tunnel's mouth like smoke from an unseen fire. I looked up. No signs, no cameras, just cracked concrete stained with what looked like water or something darker, dripping down the walls. "We go through fast," I said. "One straight line. Don't stop, no matter what." He nodded, and I hit the gas. The tires crunched forward into the black. The second we entered, the outside world cut off like someone had closed a curtain behind us. No fog, no moonlight, nothing. My headlights could barely cut through 10 feet of darkness. I thought we'd make it through. Just a quick shot through, and we'd be out the other side. But halfway in, the dashboard blinked out. The engine sputtered. Then everything went dead. No lights, no hum, just stillness. I turned the key. Nothing. Again, nothing. Riku was already pulling the flashlight from the glove box. His hands were trembling. The moment he turned it on, I wish he hadn't. The beam cut forward, just far enough to show the wet road. Then feet, bare, pale, motionless. The light slid upward. A white dress soaked at the hem. A figure. Woman, I think, standing dead center in our lane, facing us. Her arms hung limp at her sides, her hair draped over her face like seaweed pulled from a river. She didn't move. She didn't blink. I whispered, "Do you see her?" Riku didn't answer. Then his flashlight flickered once and went out. We were in total black. And then, from the back seat, close behind my head, a long, slow exhale. For a second I couldn't breathe. That breath behind my head, it wasn't imagined. I heard it, slow, wet, like someone inches from my neck, exhaling through a broken throat. I spun around in my seat with the flashlight. No one was there. Riku gripped the dash like he was bracing for impact. "She's still in front of us," he said, voice shaking. I turned the beam forward again. The woman hadn't moved, still barefoot, still motionless in her soaked white dress, her head slightly tilted now like she was listening. I honked the horn. It didn't work, dead like everything else. Then her arm twitched. Just a slight jerk of the shoulder, but it hit me like a punch. Then she stepped forward. One step. Her face came into view under the shifting beam of light, blank, gray, eyes hollow like something had caved them in. "Back up," Riku whispered. "I can't," I said. "The car's dead." Suddenly the lights flickered for half a second, long enough for me to see something else. Behind her, maybe 10 meters down the tunnel wall, something was moving, crawling, flat against the cement. It looked like a man, but wrong. Elongated limbs, head twisted. The way it skittered along the wall didn't seem real. It wasn't just her. I slammed the ignition again. Dead. Again. Nothing. The woman took another step, then another. That same scream from earlier, piercing, inhuman, rose around us again. Not from her lips. It came from everywhere, like the tunnel itself was crying out. The flashlight in my hand trembled. The beam danced wildly. Every time it flickered, her shape blurred like she was blinking between worlds. Closer each time. Riku grabbed my arm. Behind us. I turned the light back. That crawling thing was maybe 6 feet from the rear bumper now, upside down on the wall, mouth gaping like it was trying to speak. And then, finally, the engine coughed. Lights flickered on for a blink. Then everything died again. But something changed. The woman was gone. The crawling shape, gone too. Riku gasped. "Where?" I felt a hand brush the back of my neck. I didn't turn. I couldn't turn. Then came a sound I will never forget. The gentle click of the back door unlocking by itself. The car roared to life like it had been holding its breath. I didn't ask questions. I just slammed the gas pedal. Tires screeched. Headlights surged weakly to life, and we bolted forward into the tunnel's black throat. "Go! Go!" Riku shouted, gripping the door handle so hard his knuckles looked bloodless. The tunnel blurred past us, but something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The GPS on the dash flashed and stuttered, then it froze. Still in Yanagisawa Tunnel 0000, recalculating. What? I slammed the screen. We'd been driving for over a minute, but it still said we hadn't moved an inch. Riku wasn't answering anymore. He was mumbling something, repeating it under his breath like a chant. I snapped my fingers in front of his face. "Riku, what the hell are you saying?" He didn't blink, just stared ahead, whispering in perfect rhythm. I saw her eyes. I saw her fall. I saw her die, but not at all. "Riku, wake up!" I shouted. No response. His pupils had dilated, his face gone slack. In front of us, the tunnel shifted. Not physically, but visually, everything distorted, like the walls were folding inward. Suddenly, every road sign was backward. My headlight skimmed the words, "Turn back. No exit. I'm still here." The tunnel ahead split, literally. For one terrifying second, the road bent at impossible angles, revealing a side path that shouldn't exist, like a memory carved into concrete. And standing at the fork, there she was again, the woman in white. Only this time, she was smiling. Blood pooled at her feet, reflecting the headlights. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice, somehow inside my skull. He didn't wait. He left me there. Riku suddenly lunged forward, grabbing the wheel. "Let her in," he shouted. I elbowed him back. "What are you doing?" "She just wants to talk." Something hit the windshield. Not debris. A face. Her face. Smearing down the glass with eyes wide, mouth open, as if screaming underwater. The car fishtailed. For a second, I thought we were going to crash, but then we saw it. The end of the tunnel. The light. I floored it. The engine screamed. Riku slumped back in his seat. Silent. We burst into the open air like we'd shattered through a wall. Silence. Real, breathable silence. We pulled over just past the exit. My hand shook as I turned the engine off. The dash clock blinked 2:13 a.m., same as when we first entered. I stepped out into the cold air and checked around the car. Nothing damaged. But something clung to the rear wheel well. I crouched down. My stomach dropped. Long black strands of hair, wet, tangled, wrapped tightly around the axle. I tore them free and tossed them without thinking. Neither of us said a word on the drive back. We never told anyone. But the next day, I looked up Yanagisawa Tunnel online, and I found something I wish I hadn't. An old forum thread from 2009. Anyone else lose time in that tunnel? My brother swore he saw someone in the road. Weeks later, he crashed, trying to avoid her. I closed the page, blocked the site. I've never opened it again. Now, whenever I drive at night and the road feels too quiet, if the lights flicker or the GPS reroutes me for no reason, I take the long way, always, because some tunnels don't lead back to where you came from, and some passengers don't leave when the ride ends. Story 6, Tomoko and the Night and Day Tunnel. Ehime, Shikoku. It started with a dare, the kind that's half a joke, until you're 3 hours deep into mountain roads with no cell signal and too much silence. We were supposed to be studying for midterms. Instead, we were in Kota's car, speeding toward Ehime's countryside, chasing a ghost story we all pretended not to believe in. It was Mika's fault. She was always like that, laughing too loud, challenging every rumor just to see who'd flinch first. A few nights earlier, she'd found a post on some half-dead site about a place called Yahari Tunnel. It was nicknamed the Night and Day Tunnel because, supposedly, time worked differently inside. Light bent. People got lost. One girl, a university student named Tomoko, vanished on a full moon night after being chased by a black dog. Mika slammed her phone on the table and grinned. "Let's go. Let's film it. Let's prove it's all nonsense." Kota groaned, but he was already grabbing the car keys. Ren naturally brought his camera. He'd been trying to start a horror doc series for months. This was perfect material. And me? I didn't say no. I don't know why. I think I just wanted to be the kind of person who didn't say no. We hit the expressway just after noon. By the time we reached the edge of Shikoku, the sky had bruised into that weird purple-orange haze that only exists on long road trips, when you haven't slept and the world starts to feel slightly off axis. The first sign something was wrong came when we stopped for gas in a tiny village west of Uchiko. The locals wouldn't meet our eyes. One woman sweeping her porch muttered something to Ren when he asked for directions. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard the words "long shadows" and "don't listen if it calls you." We laughed it off. But then the GPS started glitching. No matter how many times we refreshed it, Yahari Tunnel wouldn't show up on any map app. It was like the place didn't exist. Kota got frustrated and tossed the phone into the glove box. That's when we saw it. We'd taken a turn through an old cedar grove, and suddenly the road narrowed, overgrown and half forgotten. Up ahead, the trees parted, and there it was, the tunnel. No signs, no markers, just a gaping mouth in the side of the hill, jagged at the edges, like something had chewed its way out. The sun was almost down. Light didn't reach inside. Even from the car, I could feel it, the drop in temperature, like a held breath. The concrete around the tunnel entrance was cracked and streaked black, like it had been burned long ago. Ferns curled along the edges, as if afraid to grow too close. Mika leaned forward, grinning. Looks like we've found it. I remember the way the headlights stretched across the entrance. The darkness didn't begin at the mouth. It swallowed the beams before they reached 5 meters in. I took out my phone to snap a picture. It refused to focus, just a blur, like something was vibrating inside the black. Ren started filming. Kota turned off the engine. The silence grew. I remember thinking, tunnels aren't supposed to breathe. "We go in tomorrow night," Mika said. "Full moon, just like the story." I didn't argue. But that night, in the motel room, I dreamed of a girl with no face, standing at the end of the tunnel, whispering something I couldn't hear. When I woke up, the words "don't stop" were scribbled across my pillowcase in black ink. I sleepwalk sometimes. At least, that's what I told myself. We waited for nightfall. The full moon rose like a pale coin over the tree line, spilling light that felt too bright and too colorless, like something reflected, not given. Kota reversed the car until the tunnel loomed directly ahead. Ren set up the camera in the center console, and Mika opened the app she used to monitor audio fluctuations. I kept my notebook in my lap, pen in hand. I don't know why. Like writing things down would make it less real. "Ready?" Kota asked. No one answered, but we all nodded. The headlights cut through the fog and into the mouth of the tunnel. That first moment inside is still sharp in my mind. The road dipped slightly, and then the walls swallowed the car whole. Sound died instantly. Even the tires rolling over the pavement sounded distant, muted, like we'd driven underwater. Mika laughed, but it was too loud, too sudden. Okay so far, boring. Then the air changed. The temperature dropped in a snap. Cold bloomed across the windows, and thin streaks of condensation spidered over the inside of the glass, despite the heater being on full blast. Kota rubbed his hand on the windshield, but it kept fogging back over. It was like the cold wasn't just around us. It was inside the car. The radio, which had been playing low instrumental music, popped with static. The sound warped mid-song. Then it wasn't music at all, just whispering. At first, I thought it was in another language, but the longer I listened, the more the syllables felt familiar, like someone was trying to mimic a voice I knew. Ren leaned forward, squinting at the screen on his camera. "Something's wrong," he said. "Frame rate's dropping, but only in bursts." He rewound the footage, paused, and showed us the screen. A single flicker, less than half a second. A white figure in the back seat between Mika and me. Head tilted, no face. None of us had seen it in real time. Mika scoffed, but I saw her hands shaking. "Could be compression," she muttered, trying to sound bored. Then she froze. "What is that?" she whispered. We all turned. Nothing. "Something just exhaled," she said, voice tight. "Right here." She motioned behind her ear. I felt it. I swear, A low, distant growl rumbled through the tunnel. Kota stopped the car. "No," I said too quickly. "Don't stop." The growl came again, louder, closer, like claws on stone, like a breath rolling through something too narrow. Ren turned the camera toward the back window. The display flickered. For a second, just a second, I saw it. A black blur, 4 legs, moving faster than it should, paws never quite touching the ground. I said it again, louder this time. "Don't stop." Kota slammed the gas. The tunnel stretched on ahead of us longer than it had looked on the map. Longer than we remembered. The light at the far end never came, and then finally, a flicker of gray, daylight, the exit. We burst out of the tunnel, tires screeching on wet asphalt. Silence, no wind, no birds, just silence. Ren shut off the camera and stared at the blinking battery icon. "Dead?" Kota asked. Ren nodded. "Was full when we started. Supposed to last 4 hours." I looked out the rear window. The tunnel stood there, still and dark. A mouth that had bitten, not just swallowed. Mika wouldn't look at it. None of us said a word the entire drive back to the motel. That night, I replayed the whispers in my head, and in the silence before sleep, I thought I heard a voice at my door, panting, waiting. I barely slept. When I closed my eyes, I saw her, Tomoko. Not a memory or a dream. It was more like something replaying itself behind my eyelids. She was standing in front of the windshield again, white dress, soaked through, hair matted to her face, one hand raised, not waving, pressing against the glass, and her mouth moved. But there was no sound. I woke up gasping, clutching my notebook like it could explain something. Ren had already propped the camera on a makeshift charging rig he built from spare batteries. Kota sat by the motel window, staring out at the hills. Mika hadn't come inside all night. We found her sitting on the curb outside, curled in her jacket, eyes red. "There's a girl in the trees," she whispered. We looked. There was nothing. "She doesn't blink," Mika added. "She just watches." We tried to leave, packed everything before sunrise and headed for the main road out of town. But 30 minutes in, Kota frowned. "This can't be right," he said. We passed the same abandoned vending machine, same crooked pine leaning toward the guardrail, same splintered road sign bent at the base. We looped back to the tunnel 3 times. I started marking it in my notebook, drawing a new tally each time we returned to the same stretch of road. No GPS, no signal, no other cars. Each loop made us quieter. Later that afternoon, Ren reviewed the tunnel footage again. He froze the frame, the one with the girl in white. He enhanced it, adjusted the contrast. "She's looking at me," he said. I leaned closer. It wasn't just that she was facing the camera. Her eyes were tracking it. And then her lips moved. We played it over and over, each of us trying to read it. Ren pulled up phonetic charts. Kota used an audio enhancer, even though the clip had no sound. Finally, Mika whispered it aloud. "Don't stop. Silence dropped over the room like wet fabric. I think that's when we all knew we were being tested. The tunnel didn't want to scare us anymore. It wanted to see what we'd do. It wanted to see what we'd choose. We spent the day arguing about how to break the loop. Kota wanted to drive faster. Ren wanted to destroy the camera. Mika just wanted to walk into the trees and keep going. But I remembered something from the legend, something no one talks about, that the dog only chases you when you enter. But Tomoko, she's always near the exit. She's the warning, the signal, and she only speaks once you've already broken the rules. At sunset, we made a decision. One final crossing, no headlights, no music, no distractions, just the sound of the engine, and whatever came next. Kota adjusted the mirrors and said, "No stopping, no matter what." We got in the car. Mika sat behind me, knees drawn to her chest. Ren held the camera, recording in complete darkness. I kept the notebook open on my lap, pen trembling in my grip. As the tunnel approached, everything went completely still. No wind, no sounds, just the soft rumble of tires and a growing tension like the earth itself was holding its breath. The last thing I saw before we entered was Mika staring back at the trees. "I think she is waiting," she whispered. Then the mouth of the tunnel swallowed us whole, and this time it was darker than before. We entered the tunnel for the last time with the headlights off. No music, no voices, only the sound of the tires pressing against wet asphalt and the distant drip of water from the arched ceiling above us. The air inside was colder than it had any right to be. I remember Kota gripping the wheel, knuckles white, his jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Ren had the camera on, but the red light barely blinked. Mika sat behind me, whispering to herself. Something about a face, something about the trees following us now. Seconds passed like minutes. The tunnel felt longer than ever. Then the car shuddered. Once, twice. The engine hiccuped, then caught again. We didn't speak. None of us dared to. That's when I saw them. Reflections that didn't belong to us. Flickers in the glass. Pale, blank faces that hovered outside the windows. Eyes open. Lips unmoving. They passed in a blur, one after another, like they were pacing the car from outside, watching through the glass with perfect stillness. Then came the sound. A growl so low it seemed to vibrate in my ribs from behind. Kota checked the mirror. His voice cracked for the first time in hours. "It's back." I turned. The dog, larger now, its body longer than before, the fur rippling in slow motion. It didn't run. It glided, paws never quite touching the ground, like it was part of the darkness itself. Mika whimpered and clawed at the window. "She's beside me," she whispered. "She's right there. She's—" Her breath fogged the glass, but I saw nothing. Still, I felt it too. The pressure, the presence, like someone was sitting between us. The tunnel stretched on. Ren's camera blinked once, then turned off. Fully charged. No explanation. Then everything stopped. Up ahead, something blocked the exit. A figure standing in the road. White dress, soaked from the ceilings, slow dripping. Hair over her face, one hand raised. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Tomoko. Her mouth was open, not screaming, just open, as if she were trapped mid-warning. I whispered, "Kota." He shook his head. "Number. I'm not stopping." We didn't break. Not when the dog's snarl filled the car, not when the lights flickered on by themselves, not when Mika screamed so loud it made my vision blur. We drove through her, right through the girl in white, And then a scream. It didn't come from Mika or Kota or even from the speakers. It came from inside the car, too loud, too sharp, too much. It cracked the silence open like glass. I don't remember the impact. I woke up to stillness, alone. The car was parked just outside the tunnel, facing the road we'd taken in. No one else was inside. No blood, no signs of a crash, no voices, no movement, just silence. The trees looked normal. The hills were quiet. Even the sky had that false blue tint of morning. In the back seat, something rested neatly on the cushion. A small notebook. Water damaged, but still readable. I picked it up and turned the pages. Names, dates, drawings, and then my name. I recognized the handwriting from the old records Ren pulled during our research. Tomoko's journal. There's a final entry, scrawled in the corner of the back cover. Don't stop. If you stop, it stays with you. Sometimes, when I drive now, always with the windows closed, the radio off, I hear it again. Just once. Faint. Mika's voice. She says my name, like she's still calling me from the back seat. And I don't look. I don't stop. I just keep driving, because I think if I do, I won't be the one behind the wheel anymore. Story 7. The Faceless Guardian of Saru-o Tunnel, Chiba, Kanto. They say you don't realize when a moment becomes a memory or a warning. That summer started like any other, hot wind, long nights, the kind of boredom that makes you do something you shouldn't. We were just 3 friends, me, Kenji, and Tomo, bored, cocky, and maybe a little too curious. Chiba had always been our getaway spot. Hiking trails, quiet beaches, cheap roadside food. But this time, Tomo wanted something different. He pulled up a thread on his phone while we sat at a ramen shop. Saru-o Tunnel, blue lights, missing workers, and a ghost with no face. It had a grainy photo, a mist-covered tunnel mouth framed by crooked pine trees. Looked fake, probably was, except it wasn't. We dared each other to go. Of course we did. And we filmed everything because if you don't post it, it didn't happen, right? We got there just before dusk. The tunnel was older than I expected, stone-lined, sunken into the mountainside like it had grown there. No signs, no markers, just mossy walls and cold air that felt heavier than it should have been, like stepping underwater. Tomo laughed too loud. He always did when he was nervous. "You believe this stuff?" he asked, flashing his phone toward the dark. "Come on, it's just a hole in the hill." We clicked on our LED lanterns and stepped inside. It was colder than outside, not a breeze, just still. The air didn't move. Every footstep echoed like we were walking through someone's lungs. I remember the hum first. Not loud, a low vibration, like the tunnel was breathing through stone. That's when the lights began to flicker. Not all at once, just one, then another. And then, in the far distance, maybe 30 meters in, a glow. Blue, software floating, like it wasn't bound to anything. "Dude," Kenji whispered, "do you see that?" We pointed our lanterns ahead, and that's when we saw her. She stood just past the light, in a white robe that barely moved. Her arms hung at her sides, no shoes, no sound. Her head tilted slightly like she was listening. But her face, there wasn't one, no eyes, no mouth, no nose, just a pale, smooth surface, like porcelain smoothed by rain. Tomo did what he always did. He laughed, a weak, shaky noise. "Hey, lady, Halloween's in October." She moved, not stepped, shifted, no sound, no blur. One moment she was there, and the next she was closer. Kenji gasped and grabbed my arm. "Run," he whispered, but none of us moved until the lanterns died, all three just out. We fumbled with our phones, screens bright for a split second, enough to catch her again, even closer, no feet, no movement, just there. We ran. I don't remember deciding to. My body moved before my mind caught up. Kenji screamed, slipped. Something caught his back, or maybe just touched it. He cried out, not from pain, from being noticed. We dragged him up, stumbling, tripping over slick moss and gravel until we burst back into the forest night. We didn't stop running until the road was in sight. Back at the car, none of us spoke, not for a long time. Later, we checked the footage. The files were corrupted, all but one frame, just one. A still from when we first saw her. But this time, she was right behind us, closer than we ever saw with our eyes, and staring, not with eyes, but with that terrible blankness, like a mask that's not really a mask, like something that's not supposed to have a face at all. That night, Tomo joked it off again, said he was fine, said we all imagined it, but something came back with us. The next morning, Tomo texted, "Did you hear anything outside last night? Sounded like footsteps on gravel. I live on the 5th floor." He never answered after that. They say the mind makes up stories to explain fear. But fear doesn't need a story. It just needs silence. A week had passed since we stepped into Saru-o Tunnel. 1 week since Tomo cracked a joke into the dark and something answered. We tried not to talk about it, tried to move on like it never happened, until Tomo stopped replying. He posted a single update the night before he vanished. It was short, no caption, just a video. It showed the hallway outside his apartment, empty, still. But the sound, that's what shook me. Footsteps, soft, uneven, like someone dragging their feet through gravel. Then he whispered, off camera, 5th floor. No one should be out there. The post vanished after 10 minutes. He never logged in again. Kenji and I met the next morning. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew why. We pulled up our old footage again, what was left of it. Most of it was static and broken frames, but one corrupted file had strange data we hadn't noticed before. A split-second image buried in black static. A shape, pale, standing directly behind Tomo. We didn't sleep that night. Instead, we dug deeper. Message boards, abandoned threads, cached blog posts, all from people who had visited the tunnel. Some described seeing her in their dreams. Others said they woke to find mist inside sealed rooms. One post chilled me most. If you saw her and she saw you, she marks you. You'll start seeing things that shouldn't move. You'll hear her breathing through walls. Eventually, she wants you back. I remembered the lanterns dying, how close she had gotten, how Tomo was the first to speak to her, maybe the first to be marked. That night, I couldn't stay still. I felt watched, even with the lights on. Then I heard it. Drip, drip, drip. Not from the kitchen, not the bathroom. It came from inside my closet. I opened it slowly, empty, dry, nothing unusual. But the sound continued. That's when I turned toward my bedroom mirror. There, on the glass, was a smear, a handprint, but not a normal one. It had no fingers, just a palm, pressed wide and flat, almost like a face. I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I checked in with Kenji. His voice was hollow. He hadn't heard the dripping, but his mirror had fogged during the night. He lived alone. The heat was off. His window was sealed. Something wasn't right. Something had followed us. We weren't dealing with just a haunting. The tunnel wasn't a place you visited. It was a place that remembered. And if Tomo was gone, it wasn't because he went back. It's because the tunnel came to him. It wasn't guilt that brought me back to Chiba. It was something colder, sharper, like a thread had been tied to the center of my chest and was slowly reeling me back toward the tunnel, whether I wanted to or not. Tomo was gone. Kenji wouldn't return my messages anymore, and I kept hearing it, the sound of breathing through stone, so I went back, alone. The village near Saru-o Tunnel felt abandoned, though I knew people still lived there. Curtains shifted as I walked past. Doors closed quietly. I wasn't welcome. Eventually, someone spoke to me, an older man in stained work coveralls, smoking behind a shuttered maintenance shed. He didn't look up when he said, "You're not the first to come back. You won't be the last." I asked what he meant. He didn't answer, just dropped his cigarette and walked inside. But he left the door ajar. Inside, I found a stack of old reports in plastic sleeves. One caught my eye, dated 14 years ago. Tunnel reinforcement failure, 3 missing workers. Status, structure sealed, investigation incomplete. The original Saru-o tunnel had been built decades ago, but I learned something they never put online. It was repaired, rebuilt, patched over again and again. Every time someone vanished, it was reinforced, not for safety, for containment. That night, I pitched a small tent near the tunnel entrance. I didn't plan to sleep. At 3:12 a.m., the mist came. It didn't roll in like fog. It bled from the cracks in the stone, from the seams in the road, like it was being exhaled. And then came the hum, low, faint, like someone breathing just behind a concrete wall. I held my flashlight tightly, my fingers already cold. When I turned it on, the beam shook slightly. I was shaking too. I stepped inside. Immediately, I saw them. Faint blue lights pulsing along the tunnel walls. Not flickering, breathing. Each time I blinked, I thought I saw them move. Then I heard it, a soft, dragging sound. I spun around, nothing, just mist. But my flashlight caught something else. Footprints, barefoot, damp, facing the tunnel's exit, as if someone had tried to leave. I moved deeper. The hum grew louder. My ears rang. My breath became visible. Then she was there, the woman in white, closer than before, not at the far end, not behind, not beside, just ahead, still, waiting. I froze, blinked. She was closer. No footsteps, no sound, just less distance. I blinked again, closer. Her robe dragged, but didn't touch the ground. Her arms hung by her sides, unmoving, and her face, if you can call it that, stared at me, smooth, blank, reflecting nothing. I turned and ran. But the tunnel stretched behind me. It no longer obeyed its original shape. I ran for what felt like hours. My feet hit water, then moss, then stone again. Finally, I burst into the open air, gasping, covered in sweat. The sun was rising. Birds chirped like nothing was wrong. But I wasn't fine, because when I looked down at my boots, they were soaked, but only on the inside. And in my tent, my phone was still recording. The last minute of footage showed the entrance to the tunnel, empty, until she stepped into frame for a breath, then vanished. They say when someone disappears, you notice the absence before the silence. That's what happened with me. I was still in my apartment, still breathing, still speaking, but something had left me. Time stopped behaving normally. Minutes would slip while I stared at blank walls. My phone's battery would drain even while turned off. Sometimes I'd blink and the sun had moved, or hadn't. It began small, finding moss on the inside of my jacket cuffs, a smear of dirt under my nails after a day indoors. But then it escalated. The audio logs I recorded overnight picked up breathing. It wasn't mine. Slower, heavier, like someone crouching beside the bed, waiting. I deleted the first file, then the second, but the third I kept because I heard my voice whispering even though I hadn't spoken. Just one word. Come back. I didn't feel haunted. I felt claimed. I stopped going outside. My friend Kenji had vanished too. No texts, no calls, not even footprints near his apartment. I searched for recent posts, obscure forums, private threads, and I kept seeing the same thing. Your reflection moves slower the longer it watches you. One night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror for nearly 10 minutes. I didn't move, but my reflection breathed. That was when I decided if the tunnel marked us, then I needed to unmark myself or finish what started. I set up a live stream. Simple gear, backup battery, no dramatic monologue, just one line before I left. If I don't come back, don't follow, please. The chat filled with laughing emojis. Some viewers were excited, some scared. One user simply typed, "Don't blink inside." At exactly 2:59 a.m., I arrived at Saru-o Tunnel again. The mist came on time. So did the hum, the low pulsing breath from beneath the stone. I stepped inside. The camera stayed live for the first 20 minutes. People in chat noticed odd things I couldn't. Flickers behind me, faces in the walls, a tall shape standing just outside the beam of light. I kept going. Around 3:22, the stream froze, static, then black. Then something moved across the frame too close to the lens. When the signal returned for a moment, I wasn't on screen. The camera faced the far end of the tunnel, and in the mist, for only a few seconds, a figure stepped forward. Not me. White robe, no face. Then the feed died for good. 3 days later, hikers found my camera. Still intact, still recording, battery somehow full, but I was gone. The last frame showed me turning around inside the tunnel and smiling. My face was smooth and pale, like stone under frost. No mouth, no eyes, just a soft curve where expression used to be. Locals say the tunnel never wanted victims. It wanted shapes, echoes. Now, when someone enters and survives, their lights flicker, and one face among the watchers in the wall looks almost familiar. If you see it, don't blink. Story 8, Maeda's Silent Watcher, Okinawa. I've dived all over Japan's southern islands, but nothing prepared me for what I saw at Cape Maeda. It was early May. Tourist season hadn't kicked into full swing, and I thought I'd get some solo time beneath the reefs before the waters got crowded. I arrived just past 5 p.m., a little later than planned, but the water was calm and the sun still hung low over the East China Sea, painting the limestone cliffs in warm gold. Maeda Point is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but locals treat it with a strange caution. They don't talk about it much, and when they do, it's usually in short phrases, like they're afraid of saying too much. When I asked a woman at the gear rental shack if the site was safe for diving, she only said, "Be careful near the old tomb by the cliff. Don't stay too late." I thought she meant the tides. By the time I made it to the water's edge, the sun was nearly brushing the horizon. I laid out my fins and tank on the rocks beside that tomb. a weathered stone box half swallowed by creeping vines, its surface covered in salt and centuries of silence. That's when I noticed him. An old man standing maybe 10 meters down the shore, right where the tide met the rocks. He was facing the sea, hands folded neatly behind his back. He wore a wide Okinawan straw hat and a plain gray shirt. His white hair, tangled and long, fluttered slightly in the ocean breeze. I assumed he was one of the retired fishermen who often came to watch the water. I called out a greeting, but he didn't react. Odd, but I shrugged it off and got into the water. For nearly an hour I drifted among coral pillars and darting fish, exploring crevices that looked like ancient ruins. But near the end of my dive, just before I surfaced, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Through the wavering surface of a shallow tidal pool, I saw a face, pale, expressionless, and upside down, hovering just above me. It wasn't wearing dive gear. It didn't move. It just stared through the water as if watching from another world. Then, faintly from above the waves, I heard laughter. It wasn't joyful or mocking, just hollow, like someone remembering a joke they no longer found funny. I shot to the surface, gasping. The tide had risen slightly. The tomb stood quietly under the last rays of the sun. The old man was gone. Shaken, I packed my gear and left without rinsing off. The next morning, the coast was buzzing. Fishermen had found something tangled in their nets just 100 meters from the point. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. Lying on the sand, soaked in seaweed, was a man's body. Face pale and swollen, arms stretched toward land like he'd been reaching for salvation. They said he was a snorkeler from another prefecture, had gone missing 2 nights ago. No one had seen him enter the water. I asked if anyone had seen an elderly man near the tomb the evening before. An old woman glanced toward the sea, then spoke without looking at me. You saw him, the one who watches the edge. When he appears, the sea gives back what it took. I didn't reply. I just stared at the tomb as the wind picked up. I could have sworn I saw a figure, just for a second, far out at the water's edge, hands behind his back, gazing quietly out to sea. I should have left Okinawa that morning. After seeing the dead man pulled from the sea, his face still etched with panic, I told myself I'd pack up and catch the next ferry. But something wouldn't let me go. It was the old man, that silent figure near the tomb. I kept replaying the moment I saw him walk into the tidal pool and then vanish. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I found myself back at Maeda Point before sunrise, sitting on the very rock where the figure had stood. The waves lapped gently at the shoreline. The stone tomb sat unchanged, covered in salt, sea lichen, and that crushing silence that now seemed to bleed from it. I wasn't alone. A local fisherman was already casting lines off the cliff edge. I struck up a quiet conversation. He said his name was Takao. Gray-haired, leathery skin from decades in the sun. He didn't speak in full sentences, just fragments like echoes of warnings. You saw him, didn't you? The one with white hair. If he walks, it means the sea's not done. I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. He just looked at the water with narrowed eyes and said, "Another will come. It's always more than one." That day, I did something stupid. I dived again. Call it morbid curiosity or maybe something worse. I had to know if what I saw was real. The wind had picked up and the tide was higher than usual. As I slipped into the water near the tomb, I noticed something new. Something I was sure hadn't been there before. A narrow crevice had opened below the cliffs, half hidden beneath a curtain of kelp. It looked like a cave, small but deep. The moment I approached, my dive mask fogged over from the inside. My ears rang slightly like the water pressure had shifted, though I was barely 10 meters down. And that's when I saw it. A hand, just a hand, pale and motionless, floating just outside the dark mouth of the crevice. It wasn't reaching, it wasn't moving, it was just waiting. I swam closer against every instinct I had. The closer I got, the colder the water felt, as if the cave itself was exhaling something ancient. When I turned on my underwater torch, the light barely penetrated the crevice, but I saw faces, more than one, at least 4, men, maybe women, suspended just inside the rocky mouth like they were stuck mid-swim, eyes open, hair waving slowly in the current. None of them wore tanks. I should have surfaced right then. But then, movement, not from the corpses. From behind them, I didn't see the face, only the silhouette, a hunched figure, hands behind its back, gliding silently inside the cave like it was walking on the seafloor. Its hat floated above its head like it wasn't tethered to anything. The outline passed behind the frozen bodies and then turned to face me. That's when my air regulator hissed, a sharp, unnatural burst. I panicked and bolted upward, scraping my leg against coral. I surfaced, gasping, bleeding, disoriented. The sky above was darkening fast, even though it was only mid-afternoon. On shore, Takao stood, watching me, motionless. When I made it back to the rocks, he said one thing. He showed you the ones he keeps. That night, the coast was quiet. But early the next morning, news broke. Another snorkeler was missing, a man from Sapporo, last seen heading toward Maeda Point alone. They never found his body. But I know where it is, and I know who is watching. I tried to leave after seeing the floating bodies in that cave. After seeing him, I packed my gear and boarded the next ferry out of Okinawa. But somewhere in the middle of the crossing, my chest tightened. Not fear, something else, like pressure, like something still had its grip on me. For the next week, I stayed with a friend in Kagoshima, far from the coast. But at night, I heard water, not imagined, real, dripping near my bed, sloshing behind the walls. When I opened my eyes, I'd sometimes see salt stains on the floorboards and seaweed caught in the corners of the room. Once, I woke up coughing seawater. Something had followed me. No one believed me. My friend blamed stress, said I was still shaken by the body I saw. I didn't argue, but every morning I'd find tiny wet footprints on the floorboards, barefoot and always facing the door. I booked a return trip to Okinawa. I wasn't trying to fight it. I just wanted answers. This time I didn't dive. I only brought a flashlight, waterproof boots, and an old GoPro with a cracked lens. I arrived at Maeda Point just before dusk. No tourists, no fishermen, just the breeze and the low groan of the tide breathing through the reef caverns. I stood by the tomb. The stone had cracked since I last saw it, a clean split running down the side like the sea itself had opened it. The wind died suddenly, and there he was, the old man, standing ankle-deep in the surf, exactly where I'd first seen him, still watching the horizon. His long white hair floated as if underwater, even though the breeze was gone. I raised my camera, hands trembling. He turned. His face was blurred, not just by the lens, but in real life, like the air around it refused to hold its shape. But I saw his eyes. They weren't angry, they weren't sad, they were empty, not blank, emptied, like the sea had drained them. He walked toward me, slow, deliberate, with the rhythm of a tide that never stops. I tried to move, but my legs locked. Then from behind him, I saw figures rising from the water, not climbing, floating, men, women, all barefoot, all soaked, all with faces too pale to be living. Their eyes, too, were void, but each one had something familiar, something I had seen before. That's when I understood. These weren't strangers. They were the lost, the missing snorkelers, the divers, the people who never made it back. And as they stepped onto the beach behind the old man, I saw a new face among them. Mine, paler, slack-jawed, eyes wide in shock. A perfect replica, dripping seawater standing motionless behind him. I ran, not toward the road, toward the cliffs. Don't ask why. I can't explain it. Something told me that if I made it into open air, if I could just leap from the rock ledge into the crashing surf below, maybe I could break the connection, shatter the pull. I don't remember hitting the water. I only remember waking up in a hospital in Nago, covered in bruises and dried salt. A couple had found me washed up just north of Maeda Point, barely breathing. They said I was talking in my sleep, repeating the same phrase, "He waits for the next." Now, weeks later, I still have water in my lungs. The doctors say there's no infection, but every breath tastes faintly of brine. Every night, I check the floor. Sometimes I wake to find the window open and footprints, wet and bare, leading to the edge of my bed. I don't sleep much, because I know he's still out there, and I know he remembers me, just like he remembers all the ones he's watched.